Welcome back, learner. We usually tackle topics ripped from the headlines or dive into the newest trend. But this time, you've brought us something truly different. Something that's not about the latest fad, but about wisdom that's literally stood the test of time. We're talking about a book that's been around for centuries and still offers insights that can be incredibly valuable for your life today.
Mm.
We're going to take a deep dive into this text and explore what makes it so enduring.
Absolutely. Think of it less like an old book and more like a set of timeless principles. What we really want to do today is unpack what makes it so powerful and, even more importantly, what you, learner, can practically take away from it to deal with your own challenges and those inner battles we all face.
And listen, when we say old, we're not talking about last year's smartphone. This book goes all the way back to the 6th century BC.
Wow.
Yeah, something written that long ago and people still study it. It's considered one of the best books ever. In fact, it's often called the oldest military treatise in the world.
Which, on the surface, might seem a little out of place for a personal development conversation.
Right? It might sound like it belongs in a history museum, but trust me, its insights into conflict, strategy, and especially understanding yourself are surprisingly applicable to the issues we face in our own lives.
Mm.
I mean, the fact that it's lasted this long and people keep coming back to it speaks volumes about the deep wisdom it contains.
What's truly fascinating is how these ancient observations about navigating conflict, any kind of conflict, can actually provide a framework for overcoming our own personal obstacles. We're not talking about literal warfare here, but that strategic thinking and deep self-knowledge that it emphasizes are super relevant for any situation where you feel resistance. Could be external pressure or even an internal struggle.
Okay, but let's be real. Someone sees a book that's thousands of years old, their first thought might be, is this going to be a tough read? So what do you think? How accessible is this for someone coming to it for the first time?
That's such a good question and one I hear a lot. The language, because of its age and the translation, can feel a little bit formal at times. But I gotta say, the core ideas themselves are presented with remarkable clarity. It's not bogged down in overly academic language or complicated theories. The real key is not just passively reading the words, but actively thinking about the underlying concepts and how they connect to your own experiences, making it personal.
So if you're ready to jump into this, what are the fundamental concepts that someone should really try to grasp to get the most out of it? What are the essential building blocks, you could say, for understanding this ancient wisdom?
At its core, I think this book hammers home the importance of thorough preparation and a deep, deep understanding of the situation you're in. And that includes understanding yourself. It consistently stresses the need to kind of assess the landscape, know your resources, and be really strategic about when and how you engage with the challenge.
Right, so it's not just about charging headfirst into things, right?
Exactly.
There's, I remember a concept about achieving victory even before a confrontation begins. Now, that sounds incredibly useful no matter what you're up against.
Absolutely. The idea of subduing the enemy without fighting really speaks to the power of planning and preparation. It highlights how valuable it is to understand vulnerabilities and act in a way that avoids costly direct conflict. Now, think about this in the context of your personal challenges. Let's say you're trying to break a persistent habit. Well, understanding the triggers for that habit and strategically avoiding those triggers might be much more effective than constantly trying to resist the urge in the moment.
So what we're really aiming for here is to understand what this incredible book suggests you need to internalize in order to effectively deal with your own inner demons, those personal obstacles and challenges that can hold you back. What would you say are the absolute must-know takeaways in that regard?
Well, one central pillar is the importance of self-awareness. The book repeatedly stresses knowing yourself and knowing your enemy. Now, when we apply that to our inner struggle, it means gaining a very clear understanding of your own strengths and weaknesses, your triggers, the patterns of your negative thoughts or behaviors. Think of it like mapping the terrain of your own mind. Without that clear map, navigating effectively is incredibly difficult.
Right, because you can't really overcome an obstacle if you don't even know why it trips you up in the first place, right? It's like trying to solve a problem without knowing what the problem is.
Exactly. And this self-knowledge goes hand in hand with understanding the enemy. Let's say your inner demon is, for example, self-doubt. You need to understand what fuels it is past experiences, fear of failure, comparing yourself to others. Understanding the specific mechanisms of that self-doubt is critical to developing effective strategies to counter it.
So it's almost like you have to analyze your negative tendencies as if they were an opponent,
Yeah.
someone you need to study and figure out how to outmaneuver.
Yeah, in a way, that's exactly right. The book also emphasizes the importance of planning and preparation. Think about it. A leader wouldn't go into a battle without a well thought out strategy. In the same way, trying to tackle your inner demons without a plan, without specific steps you can take, often just leads to feeling overwhelmed and defeated.
Yeah, I imagine being adaptable is huge, right? Because no matter how well you plan, things don't always go exactly as you expect.
Absolutely. The book stresses adapting to changing circumstances. What works in one situation might not work in another. Being able to adjust your approach based on the reality of the moment is crucial, whether you're, I don't know, working on a complex project or trying to break a cycle of negative thinking.
It gets really interesting when we think about how this applies to our personal lives. This ancient text talks a lot about deception and warfare,
Yeah.
creating a false impression to mislead your opponent. How might we translate that to dealing with our internal struggles?
Hmm, that is a fascinating point. It's not about being dishonest with yourself, but maybe about strategically deceiving your negative tendencies. So, for instance, if you know that feeling overwhelmed usually makes you procrastinate, you might deceive that feeling by breaking a large task into much smaller, less intimidating steps. It's a way of working around that initial resistance.
Let's see.
Or if you're trying to overcome a fear, you might gradually expose yourself to it in small, manageable steps, rather than trying to tackle it all at once, which might trigger you to retreat.
That's actually a really smart way to think about it. It's about being strategic, not always feeling like you have to confront everything head on with brute force.
Right. The book also touches on the significance of energy and timing. Knowing when to act decisively and when to conserve your resources is critical. Sometimes the smartest strategy is to wait for the right moment rather than rushing into a confrontation when you're not prepared or the conditions aren't right. Think about trying to change a deeply ingrained habit. You might need to wait for a time in your life when you have more mental and emotional energy to dedicate to it.
So if we bring all of this together, learner, what are the key principles from this ancient and influential book that you can actually use in your life to overcome those inner demons?
I'd say it boils down to a few essential ideas. First, cultivate a deep understanding of yourself, your strengths, your weaknesses, the patterns of your internal struggles. Second, really try to understand the nature of the challenges you face, those inner opponents. Third, develop a plan of action. It doesn't have to be rigid, but have some outline of how you will approach these challenges. Fourth, be adaptable. Be willing to adjust your approach as things change. And finally, be strategic. Sometimes a clever maneuver or a subtle shift in perspective can be much more effective than a direct confrontation.
It's like you need to become your own inner strategist, like an internal leader, someone who can objectively assess the situation, make smart decisions, and guide you toward overcoming those obstacles.
Absolutely. You are the commander of your own inner world. And this ancient text, in its own unique way, gives you a blueprint for developing that inner leadership. It encourages you to approach your personal battles with awareness and strategic thinking. You're not just reacting to your inner turmoil, you're thinking things through. It's a powerful reminder that even the most ancient wisdom can be incredibly relevant for navigating the complexities of modern life.
This has been eye-opening, to be honest. It's remarkable to think that a book written so long ago can still offer such practical and insightful guidance for our personal challenges. It really makes you appreciate the timeless nature of human struggles and the effectiveness of these strategies.
What's so compelling is that these core principles, understanding yourself, planning strategically, adapting to circumstances, they're not limited to any specific field or time period. They really tap into fundamental aspects of human nature, the dynamics of overcoming challenges. It's no wonder this book continues to resonate so deeply across different cultures and throughout history.
It really cements its place as one of the most important works ever written. So, learner, as you think about all this, as you reflect on what we've discussed today, I want you to consider this. What battle within yourself might you start to approach differently now that you have a new understanding of your own internal terrain? How might adopting a more strategic, more self-aware mindset inspired by this ancient wisdom change how you face a challenge in your life? It's definitely a lot to think about, but hopefully this gives you a fresh perspective on tackling those inner obstacles. Thanks for being here with us on this deep dive.
Thanks for listening, learner.